Alright, so I'm a guy in my mid-30s. Been married to my wife Hannah for about 8 years now. Things were good at first, like the kind of good where you think you're set for life and nothing's gonna change. But somewhere along the way, things started feeling off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. It was subtle, you know? Little things. It started with her being distant, I guess. She'd come home late some nights, like really late. I'd ask her about it, and she'd brush it off like it was no big deal, just work stuff or finishing up some projects. But I know her. Hannah's the type who doesn't leave the office until everything's tied up in a bow. So when she started coming home with this look on her face, distracted, tired, like she couldn't be bothered to talk, I noticed. Then, she started getting super protective of her phone. Like if I came anywhere near it, she'd pull it away fast or lock it before I could even see the screen. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe I was overthinking. But when she started taking it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom, that's when I started feeling weird. A few weeks later, I was looking for some receipts in her purse, not like I was snooping or anything, but we share finances, so I needed to check something, and I found this hotel bill. I'll never forget it, this weekend getaway kind of place. Dated for a weekend, she told me she was out of town on a business trip. I froze. The dates matched up exactly with when she said she'd be away for work, but the hotel wasn't anywhere near her office. It was on the other side of town, and from what I could tell from the bill, it wasn't the kind of place you'd stay for a business meeting. So I kept the receipt, tucked it back into her purse, and just sat on it for a while. I had to process it. I was torn between being pissed off and just confused. Was this some kind of mistake? Did I just need to ask her about it, or was I just being paranoid? Anyway, that's how it started. The first time I thought maybe, just maybe, something was wrong. But I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started paying more attention to what was going on around me. I wasn't going to jump to conclusions, but something in my gut told me this wasn't nothing. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to start a path that was going to shake everything to its core. And I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. I couldn't just ignore that hotel receipt. I mean, how could I? It was eating at me, gnawing at my gut every time I looked at her or heard her talk about work. She'd been so busy with her projects lately, constantly working late, texting people at all hours, and getting these random calls from some number that I didn't recognize. Every time she saw me glance at the screen, she'd say something like, "Oh, it's just a client," or "It's no big deal." But the tone in her voice, so defensive, so quick to shut me down, just made my heart sink a little more every time. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just overthinking, like a lot of guys do. I mean, I'd never been the jealous type. But something was off, and I couldn't shake it. So I decided to take a step that, looking back, was probably a huge mistake, but I was desperate for answers. I started tracking her phone. Not like following her exactly, at least not yet, but I used one of those apps where you can see location data. I know, it's a terrible thing to do, and I felt guilty as hell every time I opened the app. But at that point, I couldn't trust what she was saying anymore. The first time I did it, she was out at a team dinner, as she called it. She'd left the house around 6:30, but the app showed she was nowhere near the restaurant she'd told me about. She was at some other spot across town. It wasn't a place I'd ever heard of before. And she stayed there for over 2 hours, only coming home around midnight. I didn't want to freak out, no point in jumping the gun, but this was weird, right? Why lie about where you were? And why stay out so late when she claimed she was just having a casual dinner? I thought about calling her, asking her where she was, but I knew I couldn't do that without looking completely crazy. Plus, I was already second-guessing myself for even using the app. I told myself I was being paranoid. Still, I couldn't help it. The next time she went out, I did it again. This time, she went to a hotel. Not a fancy one, but still, why? She said she was going to visit a friend, but the GPS tracking showed she'd been parked outside this hotel for over 30 minutes. Not just a quick stop, but she was lingering. And that's when I knew. I knew deep down I wasn't crazy. She was lying to me. I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I had enough to know she wasn't being honest. And that was it. I couldn't just keep pretending like everything was fine. The guilt of spying? Yeah, it was brutal. I hated myself for doing it. But the pain of feeling like I was being taken for a fool? That was worse. I had to know the truth. And I was getting closer to it. I just didn't realize how deep the rabbit hole really went. At this point, I was all in. I had the hotel receipts, the weird late nights, the phone tracking. And something about all this, something about her, kept eating at me. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus on anything. My mind was just wired, constantly running through the facts, trying to piece everything together. But the thing was, the more I looked, the more I found. So one afternoon, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her messages. I told myself it was the last time, that I'd stop once I had the answers. I couldn't let myself get carried away. After all, what if I was just misinterpreting things? I opened her phone while she was in the shower. I felt a little sick to my stomach, but I told myself it was for closure, not to be some sneaky jerk. She had a password on it, but I'd seen her unlock it a few times with the same pin. I felt like a creep doing this, but I just needed to know. And then there it was. The first message I saw was from someone named Jake. Not a name I recognized. But when I looked closer, I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. The messages were flirtatious, loaded with inside jokes and references to things that were way too personal. I couldn't even read it all at first, I just froze. Then I started scrolling. There were pictures. There were plans. Jake had been texting her all the time, and I mean all the time. They'd been exchanging these late-night texts, the kind that just feel off. Things that shouldn't be happening between married people. She'd sent him pictures of herself. Nothing wild, but enough to know it wasn't innocent. I even found a message about them planning a weekend together. A weekend, just like the one on the hotel bill. It was her weekend business trip, and it wasn't for work. It was for him. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't believe it. My hands were shaking. I closed the phone quickly, like I'd been caught red-handed. I don't know what I was afraid of, being caught spying on her, or just realizing that everything I thought I knew was wrong. But in that moment, I was a man staring at the broken pieces of everything. I had all the evidence now. The lies were piling up so high that there was no ignoring them anymore. I knew who Jake was. She'd mentioned him a few times, said he was a friend from work. But friends don't text each other the way they did. Friends don't send each other that kind of stuff. So, I took a deep breath and told myself that it was time. Time to stop pretending I didn't know what was going on. Time to confront her. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't terrified. Terrified of what she would say. Terrified of the anger, the excuses, the denials. But at that moment, it didn't matter anymore. I couldn't keep living in this fog. She had to know I knew. And so I waited. I waited for her to come home from work, sat on the couch, heart pounding, barely able to sit still. I was ready. Or at least, I thought I was. She came in around 7, like she usually did, dropping her bag by the door and going straight for the kitchen. She didn't even look at me, which was weird. Usually she'd say hey or ask how my day was, but tonight it was like she didn't even see me. I just sat there on the couch, staring at her, knowing what I had to do, but still dreading it. I wasn't ready for the fight, but I couldn't back down now. "Hey Hannah," I said, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. She froze for a second but quickly recovered, turning to face me. "Hey, what's up?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her expression was guarded, like she already knew something was off. I took a deep breath. "We need to talk." Her smile dropped a little, and her eyes darted around, like she was trying to read me. She must have sensed something, but she tried to play it cool. "About what?" I didn't waste any time. I grabbed her phone from the coffee table, holding it out to her. "About Jake." The look on her face, oh man, it was like the blood drained from her skin. She went pale, and for a second, she just stared at me. The air between us felt heavy, thick with tension, like she knew exactly what was coming. She laughed, but it was fake, like a nervous laugh. "What? Jake? What about him?" I didn't say anything. I just stared at her, letting the silence hang. She shifted uncomfortably, a little too quickly, and finally spoke. "Chris, what's this about? You're not making any sense." I shook my head, suddenly so angry I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. "Don't play dumb with me, Hannah. I know about the hotel bills, the late nights, and the messages. I know about Jake. I saw everything." She blinked, her face going even paler. She looked like she was about to say something, but the words didn't come out. Then she just snapped. "Chris, you're being ridiculous. This is insane. She took a step back, like she was trying to escape the confrontation, but I wasn't letting her off the hook. I put my hand out. Stop. Don't even try. I've seen the texts. I've seen the pictures. You've been seeing him. For a second, she just stood there, her lips trembling, eyes darting around like she was trying to think of some excuse. Finally, she dropped her shoulders and let out a long sigh, like the fight had been drained out of her. Fine. You want the truth? Yeah, I've been seeing him. But it's not what you think, okay? I almost laughed. It's not what I think? You've been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back, and it's not what I think. Her voice got sharper now, defensive. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. It's not about you, okay? It's about me. It's about how I've been feeling for years. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. Years. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. What are you talking about? She took a breath, sitting down at the kitchen table, like she was trying to get comfortable. She didn't meet my eyes as she spoke, but her words came out fast, like she was unloading something heavy. I've been lonely, Chris. I've been so lonely. I've tried talking to you about this. I've tried to make you see that we weren't us anymore, but you were always too busy. You were always working, always distracted. I was here, trying to keep everything together, trying to make this marriage work, but I couldn't get through to you. I stood there, staring at her, feeling the anger rise up inside me. So, you go and sleep with some guy to fix that? That's how you fix being neglected? By cheating? By lying? By throwing us away like it's nothing? She flinched at my words, but then she stood up, taking a step toward me. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't. But Jake, he made me feel seen again. He made me feel wanted. I didn't feel like I mattered to you anymore. You were always so focused on work or on whatever it was you were doing, and I was just here, waiting for you to notice me. And when Jake did, when he showed me attention, when he listened to me, it just happened. I don't know what hurt more, the words, or the realization that she was making excuses. This wasn't some mistake or one-time thing. She had been seeing him for months. Months. Behind my back in my own house, while I was out working, thinking everything was fine. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, anything. But I just stood there, the weight of her betrayal crashing down on me, and all I could do was look at her and ask, so what now? You think you can just tell me all this, and we're gonna fix it? You think I'm gonna just forgive you and move on? Her eyes watered, and she stepped closer to me, her voice breaking. Chris, I love you. I do. I want to fix this. I want us to fix this. Please, let's go to therapy. Let's try again. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I wanted to yell at her. Tell her how much she'd ruined everything. But I didn't. Instead, I just felt this numbness settle over me. I looked her in the eyes, and I said the only thing I could think of, I don't know if I can forgive you, Hannah. I don't know if we can fix this. You've broken something, and I don't know if I can ever trust you again. And that was it. She just stood there, eyes full of tears, and I walked away. The weight of the betrayal hung in the air between us like an iron bar, and I felt it pressing on me harder with every step I took. The marriage I thought I knew? Gone. Just like that. And I was left with a choice, one I didn't know how to make. I didn't sleep that night. Not at all. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over in my head. Her words. Her excuses. The way she looked when she said she loved me. But here's the thing, love isn't enough. It wasn't enough to undo the months of lying, the sneaking around, the betrayal that hit me like a freight train. And yet, some part of me still wanted to believe that we could fix it, that therapy could somehow work. I kept telling myself I should give her a chance. People make mistakes, right? Maybe this was just a blip, a horrible mistake that we could move past. But deep down, I knew better. The trust was gone. She'd shattered it into a million pieces, and no amount of therapy or heart-to-heart was going to put it back together. The next few days were a blur. I stayed at my brother's place. I told him what happened, and his response was, well, not surprising. He didn't sugarcoat it. He said I should leave her. He said she wasn't the woman I married, and I had every right to walk away. That wasn't what I wanted to hear, though. I needed to think for myself, even though I felt like I was drowning. I kept thinking back to that hotel bill. Those stupid texts. The late nights. Everything that seemed so innocent at first, like maybe I was just being paranoid, suddenly felt like it was screaming in my face. It wasn't paranoia. It was truth. And I was forced to face it. Still, I couldn't make the decision. I wasn't ready to call it quits. Not yet. Then, everything changed. So, after I got that text from Jake, I just couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this whole thing. I mean, way more. What did he mean by she insisted? What else had he been feeding her? How deep did this go? At that point, I wasn't just pissed, I was determined. I had to know the full story, every little detail, because if I didn't, I'd never feel like I had the closure I needed. I was done with the guessing. I wanted the whole truth. I sat there for a while, just staring at that text from Jake. It pissed me off, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why would he send me a message at all? I mean, if he knew what was going on, shouldn't he just keep quiet? It felt like he was trying to play the good guy, like he was looking for some kind of redemption. But all I saw was a guy who knew exactly what he was doing and now wanted to save his own ass. I thought about texting him back. A lot. But I wasn't sure what I'd say. Should I call him out for trying to be the hero? Or should I just keep quiet and let him stew in his own guilt? I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of a response. But it did make me think about what Hannah had been saying during our confrontation. About how she felt neglected, about how Jake made her feel desired. All that crap about needing someone who listens and feeling invisible. And maybe, just maybe, Jake was part of the bigger picture of all this. Maybe he wasn't just some random affair partner. Maybe he was part of the reason she'd shut me out for so long. I needed to understand the full scope of what was going on between them. If she was going to lie to me, if she was going to pretend like I didn't exist while she ran off with him, then I could at least get some answers. She owed me that much. So, after sitting on it for a while, I finally decided to do something I didn't think I'd ever do. I reached out to him. I know, it was a huge risk. But in that moment, I couldn't see any other way. I was angry, I was hurt, and I was sick of feeling like I was in the dark. If Jake was the one who was involved with my wife, then he had a part in this mess too. He needed to own up to it. I sent him a text, something simple. Jake, we need to talk. In person. It felt insane to be doing this, but I was desperate for answers. The wait was agonizing. I didn't know if he'd respond or not, but I needed him to. And then just like that, my phone buzzed. Sure. When and where? I nearly dropped the phone. He agreed that fast? Something about it felt too easy. Like he was waiting for it. I couldn't help but think that this was all part of the game he was playing, but it didn't matter. I was in now. No backing out. I told him to meet me at a nearby park in an hour. It was public, neutral ground. I figured if things got heated, at least we wouldn't be alone. My heart was pounding, my hands sweaty. I didn't know what I was expecting, but part of me felt like this was the moment everything would change. I don't know what I was expecting when I walked up to that park, but it wasn't Jake. He was sitting on a bench near the playground, looking casual. Too casual. Almost like he knew everything was going to go exactly how he wanted it to. He didn't even stand up when I approached. Just looked at me with this stupid little smirk, like he was in control. I didn't give him the satisfaction of speaking first. I just stood there, my fists clenched, staring him down. The silence stretched between us for a long minute, and all I could think was, what the hell am I doing here? Jake was the first one to break the silence. He leaned back on the bench, his arms crossed. So, you finally got the courage to confront me, huh? Took you long enough. I felt my blood boil. Don't act like you're the victim here, I snapped. You've been sleeping with my wife for months, behind my back, and now you want to play the martyr? He didn't flinch. He just looked at me like I was the one who had it all wrong. Look man, I didn't come here to fight with you. I came because you wanted answers. And yeah, I owe you that. But I'm not the one who made promises to you. I'm not the one who took vows. Hearing him say that made something inside me snap. He wasn't wrong. But he sure as hell wasn't innocent either. You think you're a good guy? You think you can just walk away from this like nothing happened? You're just as guilty as she is. You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you? You were getting off on it, weren't you? Sneaking around behind my back, pretending to be just a friend. He shook his head, leaning forward, a little more serious now. It wasn't like that, all right? I didn't set out to destroy your marriage. But Hannah, she came to me. She was asking for help. She was unhappy. I just listened. And then it got complicated. I scoffed, taking a step closer. Oh right. You just listened? You didn't start falling for her, didn't start giving her exactly what she needed to feel wanted again. Jake finally sighed, like he was finally conceding something. Yeah, I did. But let's get one thing straight. I didn't make her cheat. I didn't make her shut you out. That was already happening before I even came into the picture. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm not the root of this problem, Chris. I was so pissed, I could feel my teeth grinding. But there was a part of me that knew he was right about one thing. This mess didn't just start because of him. Hannah had already checked out of our marriage long before she met him. But that didn't make it hurt any less. That didn't make it sting any less when I thought about how she had lied to my face for months, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. So what? You think that makes it okay? I shot back, almost laughing in disbelief. You think that's a good enough excuse for what you've done? You think you can just walk away from this, like it's all some misunderstanding? Jake's face twisted with frustration. No, I'm not saying that. But I don't need to be painted as the bad guy in this whole thing. I didn't force her to do anything. She's an adult. She made her own choices. I stared at him, the anger bubbling inside me again. He was right, of course. Hannah had made the decision to cheat. She had made the choice to lie, to hide things from me. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt like hell to hear it from him. We stood there in silence for a moment. Neither of us said anything, but I could feel the weight of everything that had been said, hanging in the air. It felt like I was standing at some kind of crossroads, like I was being pushed to make a decision, to finally choose which direction my life was going to take. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. I didn't want to give Jake the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. I needed to be cold, calculating. I just want you to know, Jake, I'm not done with this. I'm not going to just let you get away with this. You may not have forced anything, but you played a part. And I'm going to make sure she knows exactly what that means. His eyes flashed for a moment, something almost like regret crossing his face, but he didn't argue. He just nodded. Fine. You do what you need to do. And just like that, he stood up, brushed past me, and walked away. I stood there for a while, letting it sink in. What the hell had I just done? Had that been enough? Had I gotten the answers I needed? Or had I just made things worse? I had no idea. But one thing was clear, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next move was mine. And I was about to make it count. I didn't go straight home after the meeting with Jake. I couldn't. My mind was too scrambled, like 1,000 thoughts were fighting for attention all at once. But something inside me had shifted. I had spoken to him. I had heard his side, even though it didn't make me feel any better. If anything, it made me feel like more of a fool. He had this casual confidence, like he was already prepared for this confrontation. Like he knew I would eventually come after him. But now that I knew everything, or at least what Jake was willing to admit, I had to make sure I wasn't just some passive victim in all of this. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Not just with the affair, but with the way they'd both treated me like I was invisible. So I drove. No destination, just to clear my head. I ended up at the bar. I don't know why, I guess I needed something to take the edge off. I didn't drink much, just enough to feel a little bit lighter, like the weight of the past week wasn't bearing down on me quite as hard. But as soon as I sat there, nursing a beer, I started thinking about her. Hannah. The woman I had married. The woman who had betrayed me. I thought back to our good times. The way she used to look at me when we first started dating, like I was the only person in the room. The way we used to laugh together. The way we'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. How did it go from that to this? How did I end up here, sitting in a bar, plotting how to expose the woman I used to trust? I wasn't even sure how long I sat there before the idea hit me. But once it did, it felt like a light bulb went off. I needed to show her. Not just talk to her, not just sit there pretending like everything was okay. No. She needed to feel the gravity of what she had done. If she wanted to destroy our life together, then maybe I needed to destroy something of hers. Not to hurt her, but to make her see exactly how fragile everything was. The trust, the marriage, the lies. It wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It wasn't about proving a point to Jake or making her feel guilty. It was about me reclaiming my own power. If she was going to tear this apart, then maybe it was time to show her exactly what that felt like. The plan was simple, but it was going to be messy. And I knew that. But I didn't care. Sometimes, to fix things, you have to break a few things first. I was going to expose her. I was going to make sure she felt the weight of her own lies. And I wasn't just going to do it in some passive way. No, I was going to do it in front of the people she cared about the most. The next morning, I started setting things in motion. First, I needed to get to the hotel where she'd stayed the weekend with Jake. That was step one. I had the bills. I had the dates. I needed to make sure she didn't try to cover it up, pretend like it was all just some mistake. I called the hotel, posed as a potential customer asking for some information about past stays. They were more than willing to help me out. It wasn't hard to get the details on her reservation, how long she stayed, which room, even the name she used to check in. I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't just go in all guns blazing. I had to let her feel like she was still in control. So I made sure to keep things calm. I wasn't looking for a fight, at least, not yet. But I had a gut feeling that the truth would come out soon. She wasn't going to be able to keep this up much longer. Not with all the lies piled on top of each other. And while I was dealing with the hotel, I also started digging into her social media. I didn't want to do it, but I had to. I needed to see who she was talking to, what kind of life she had been leading behind my back. It felt dirty, like I was invading her privacy, but I needed to know everything. I wasn't prepared for what I found. It wasn't just Jake. There were more photos, more messages, things I couldn't even imagine. There was one post from a few weeks ago, a picture of her and Jake, standing at a bar, laughing together. The caption was something like, "Best night ever." I felt my blood turn to ice. She had been living this secret life right under my nose. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't just going to expose her to me. I wasn't just going to have a heart-to-heart about all this. No. I was going to expose her to everyone. Her friends. Her family. The people who needed to know who she really was now. I started putting the pieces together. The group chat with her friends, the family gatherings she'd always talked about, the dinner parties where she was always so careful to look happy. I was going to make sure they all knew what she had done. I wasn't going to be the only one who had to bear the weight of this betrayal. I would make sure that everyone she had lied to would know exactly who she had become. And then, when she least expected it, I was going to drop the bomb. It felt wrong, but it also felt necessary. If I was going to walk away from this marriage, then I was going to leave no stone unturned. She was going to feel every ounce of what she had done to me. Every ounce of what she had taken away from us. It was time to make my move. And there was no turning back. I didn't give her any warning. I wasn't going to. If I'd given her a heads up, if I'd told her we needed to talk, she'd just lie her way out of it again. She'd sweet-talk me, act like she was sorry but had some reason for all this. Maybe she'd cry, maybe she'd beg. But I wasn't in the mood for her excuses anymore. I wanted her to know that there was no way out this time. It was a Saturday afternoon when I decided to do it. Hannah was out running errands, probably buying something for the house or picking up groceries, like everything was normal. She had no idea what was coming. I made sure I had everything in place before I dropped the bomb. I called her best friend, Emily, and set up a dinner that evening. I was casual about it, but I told her it'd be a good chance for all of us, Hannah, me, and Emily, to catch up. I knew Emily was pretty close with both of us, and I knew she would care. At least, I thought she would. I also called my sister, Laura, and got her to come by. I didn't tell her everything. I couldn't bring myself to spill all the details just yet. But I told her enough. I told her that something had happened, something big, and I needed her support. She didn't ask too many questions, just said she'd be there. So by the time Hannah came home, everything was set. She walked in, her eyes bright like she was in a good mood. Like she didn't have a care in the world. She didn't even notice that I was acting different, like I had a plan. "Hey, you're home early," she said, tossing her purse on the couch. "What's going on? You look weird." I don't think I could have hid the intensity in my face if I tried. "We need to talk, Hannah." Her smile faltered a little. "About what?" "About everything," I said, my voice low but firm. "About you, me, Jake, all of it." Her face went pale, like she already knew. I think she'd been waiting for this moment, in the back of her mind, even though she'd done everything to avoid it. Chris, can we? No, I cut her off, standing up straight. I'm done with the lies. I'm done with pretending like I don't know what's been going on. You've been seeing Jake behind my back for months. I've seen the texts. I've seen the hotel receipts. I've seen everything. Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, like she was trying to process it all, like she hadn't expected me to catch on this quickly. But I had. And now there was no going back. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice shaky, but still trying to keep up the facade. Cut the crap, I shot back. I found the messages. I know you went to the hotel. You're not fooling me anymore. So stop pretending. I'm not the idiot you think I am. She blinked, and I could see the panic creeping into her eyes. She wasn't ready for this confrontation, not like this. She wasn't prepared for me to be this calm, this cold. She probably thought I'd fall apart, that I'd beg for answers. But no. I had answers now, and I wasn't going to beg for a damn thing. And then before she could speak again, I did something I'm not proud of. But it was the only way to make sure this wasn't just some small argument. I took out my phone, opened the gallery, and showed her the pictures of her with Jake, one of them at that bar, another of them at a park, laughing together. I put the phone in front of her face, and I could see her stomach drop. Her eyes scanned the photos, and she froze, like the truth had finally hit her. Don't you dare, she whispered. You don't have to do this. I didn't say anything. I just let her look at them, let the reality sink in. And that's when she broke. The tears came. She tried to wipe them away, but they kept coming, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the lies, the sneaking around, the way she turned me into a fool for so long. I couldn't afford to feel sorry for her anymore. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said, barely above a whisper. I was just so alone. I felt like you didn't see me anymore. Like I wasn't enough for you. I wasn't having it. Don't you dare turn this on me. This is not my fault. I didn't make you cheat. You made that choice. You and Jake. And now you're going to deal with the consequences. I took a step back, letting the words hit her. And just as I thought she might try to apologize again, the doorbell rang. Emily. And Laura, right behind her. I turned to them, trying to mask the anger in my voice, but the look on their faces told me everything. They had no idea what was going on, but they could sense the tension in the room. Hannah turned toward them, wiping her eyes. What's this? What's happening? I didn't wait for her to say another word. I pointed to the photos on the screen of my phone. You're going to tell them everything. You're going to tell Emily and Laura exactly what you've been doing. Because this is what you've chosen. The room went silent. I could feel the weight of everything crashing down on her as Emily and Laura processed what they were seeing. Hannah stood there, frozen for a moment, eyes flicking between me and the phone screen. Her face turned red, and she opened her mouth like she was about to say something, but no words came out. Finally, it was Emily who broke the silence. Is this true, Hannah? She asked, her voice shaking. She'd always been the calm one, the one who kept her cool in awkward situations, but not now. She looked at Hannah, betrayed and confused. Hannah turned to her, her eyes darting to the floor. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she muttered. It just got out of control. Laura stepped forward, her jaw clenched tight. Out of control? You've been lying to everyone, especially Chris. You've been sneaking around with Jake, and you're telling me it got out of control. Hannah looked like she might collapse. I didn't care. I was done trying to soften the blow for her. She had made her bed. Now she was going to lie in it. Emily shook her head, her eyes wet but determined. I can't believe this. I thought you were better than this, Hannah. You don't get it. Hannah snapped, her voice cracking. It wasn't like that. I felt so neglected. Like I didn't matter anymore. Like I wasn't enough. Enough. I cut her off. Enough for who? You had me, and you threw that away for someone who doesn't even care about you the way I did. Emily and Laura exchanged looks, both of them hurt but not entirely surprised. This wasn't the first time someone had let their emotions dictate their decisions. But it was the first time it had happened in our circle, my circle. Hannah broke down then, finally letting the tears come. But it wasn't the kind of cry that made me feel for her, It just made me angrier. She wasn't crying because she was sorry. She was crying because everything was unraveling. You need to leave, I told her, my voice steady. I'm done with this. I'm done with you. Go be with Jake. This marriage is over. She looked at me, her face a mix of disbelief and desperation. Chris, please don't do this. Please. But I didn't flinch. You've already made your choice. Now I'm making mine. I didn't even watch her leave. I just turned away, my body tense. I could hear her footsteps, her desperate pleas as she grabbed her things, but I didn't care. The damage had been done. Emily and Laura stayed, both of them quietly comforting me. It wasn't the kind of support I was hoping for, it didn't change anything, but it made the weight of everything feel a little less unbearable. It's been a few weeks since that night, and things have been a blur. I didn't expect it to be easy, but I didn't expect it to feel like this either. I thought I'd feel some sense of closure after everything came out, after I'd exposed her for the liar she was. But instead, I just feel numb, like I'm floating through life, trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. Hannah moved out that same night. I didn't fight her on it. She packed a bag, grabbed a few things, and left without saying a word. I could hear the guilt in her voice when she tried to apologize before leaving, but I didn't let her get any further. I told her to go, told her it was over, and then I closed the door. I've had a few people reach out, mostly friends who were still in shock, trying to understand what happened. Emily was the first to call me the next morning, but I couldn't even talk to her. I just needed time. Time to think, time to breathe. It wasn't just the affair that hurt, it was everything. All those little moments when I thought things were fine, when I believed we were happy, when I trusted her. All those times I made excuses for her behavior, for her coldness, for the late nights and the random work trips. I felt stupid, like a fool. But I'm also angry. Angry at her, at Jake, at myself. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I feel like I'm getting stronger, like I'm learning to stand up for myself in a way I never did before. I'm not just sitting here waiting for her to apologize. I'm moving on. Slowly, but I'm doing it. I've been spending more time with my sister Laura. She's been a rock for me through all of this. We've gone out for drinks a few times, hung out at her place, just talking about anything but the mess my life has become. She's been asking me what I'm going to do next, and the truth is, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever trust again, and I don't know if I want to even try. But I'm doing my best to take things one day at a time. I've been working out more, just trying to stay busy. I'm getting back into the rhythm of life, trying to rebuild what I can. It's not easy, but I know it's the only way forward. Hannah's called a couple of times, but I haven't answered. I don't need to hear her explanations anymore. I've heard it all before, and it's all just words. I don't need words. I need actions. And at this point, I don't think she's capable of giving me those. I'm not sure if I'll ever truly get over this. I think it'll always be a part of me. But I know one thing for sure, I'm not going to let this define me. I'm moving forward, one step at a time. About a week ago, I got a call from Hannah. It was late at night, and I was in bed, trying to sleep off another long day of just existing. I hadn't heard from her in days, and honestly, I wasn't expecting to. But there it was, her name lighting up my phone. For a moment, I just stared at it. I didn't know if I should pick up or not. I mean, what was the point? What was she going to say? I'd heard it all already, the apologies, the excuses, the promises. But curiosity got the best of me, and I hit accept before I could think better of it. Hannah, I said, my voice cold, even though I was doing my best to hide how I felt. What do you want? There was a pause, like she was trying to find the right words. Chris, I need to talk to you. Please, just listen. I let out a long sigh. What is there left to talk about? I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said, her voice soft, almost pleading. About everything. About us. And I know I messed up. I've been trying to fix things, to make things right, but it's been hard and Stop, I interrupted. Stop right there. I don't want to hear it. I'm serious, Chris. I'm sorry. I know I can't change what happened, but please, can we talk about this? I want to explain. I want to tell you everything. Part of me wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear how she'd justify her actions, what excuse she'd come up with this time. But another part of me, the part that had been broken and rebuilt, wasn't interested in any more of her words. Words were nothing anymore. She had destroyed everything with her actions. I wasn't some idiot waiting around to hear her side of things. I didn't need her explanation. "Hannah," I said as firmly as I could, "you had your chance. Over and over again. And you chose Jake. You chose lying, you chose sneaking around. You chose to betray me. That's all there is to it. There's nothing you can say that's going to make any of this better." I could hear her start to cry on the other end of the line. The sound of her sniffles hit me in a way I didn't expect. But it didn't change anything. "I'm sorry, Chris. Please just give me another chance," she begged. "I can't fix everything, but I can try. I'll do whatever it takes." For a second, I felt this weird pang in my chest, like the part of me that still cared wanted to reach out, wanted to help her fix it. But I shut it down. I couldn't do this anymore. I took a deep breath. "No. I can't. I'm done. You're not the person I thought you were, and I'm not going to waste any more of my time hoping you change. It's over." There was silence on the other end for a long moment, and then finally she whispered, "I understand. I hope you find happiness, Chris. Really, I do." I didn't say anything. I just ended the call. And that was it. That was the last time I heard from her. It's been a few weeks since that call, and I can finally say it, I'm moving on. It hasn't been easy, and there are still moments where I feel the weight of everything, like when I see something that reminds me of her or when I think back to the times we used to have. But overall, I'm starting to feel like myself again. I've been spending more time with people who actually care about me. Laura's been great, and Emily's been checking in too. I've even gone out a few times with some friends I hadn't seen in a while. It's funny how easy it is to slip into old habits, to laugh, to just forget about the mess for a bit. It's not that I've forgotten, but I'm learning how to live with it. Work's been busy, which helps. Keeps my mind occupied. I'm not letting myself sit in the past. The more I focus on myself, the more I realize just how much I let go while I was with Hannah. The time I wasted thinking everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I'm also getting back into hobbies I'd put aside, like running and reading. It's weird, but I feel like I'm starting fresh, like a new chapter. I'm in control of my life again, and I've realized I don't need anyone to make me happy. I haven't heard from Hannah since that night. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I know she's still trying to fix things in her own way, but that's her problem now. She made her bed. I'm done with the drama, the lies, the heartache. I'm not sure what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of it. Whatever comes next, whether it's being single for a while, or maybe finding someone who actually deserves my trust, I'm ready. It's been a few months now, and I'm starting to feel like I'm finally back on my feet. It's strange how life keeps moving, even when you're stuck in the middle of something that feels like it'll tear you apart. But here I am, surviving, moving forward, learning to enjoy my own company again. I'm still not sure what to think about everything that happened with Hannah. The betrayal still stings, but it's not consuming me anymore. I've realized that I can't change what she did, and I don't want to waste any more time on it. She's out of my life, and I'm better for it. I've started going on dates again, though I'm not rushing into anything. I don't know if I'm ready to open up fully to someone new just yet. But I'm starting to think that maybe someday, I'll find someone who will treat me the way I deserve. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm open to it. What I do know is that I've learned a lot from all of this. About trust. About myself. And about what I'm willing to put up with in a relationship. I'm not settling for anything less than what I deserve. And as for Hannah, I don't wish her any harm, but I'm done with her. She made her choices. Now she's got to live with them. And me? I'm moving forward. One step at a time.